You're 1 week from that sweet, sweet Helldiver pension. You're thinking about what you'll be doing in retirement. Throwing the frisbee to lady? Enjoying some liberty? But then, sometimes, you just get a bad dive. Cut to shreds and left for dead, but your heart still beats for the voting ballots. And goddammit, put a gun in your hand and you'll spread managed democracy to all the alien filth. Death? That'll just have to wait.
Let me see here. Bring in the LED.
You were gonna be a bad motherfucker.
Now I want to know which one of you beautiful bastards is going to take this build into tier 10, because I got to tell you, it's not exactly meant for that. But it's a great opportunity, like what is the goal of these videos and the idea behind, these builds. So this build, we're calling it the Iron Phantom. It's going to be based around energy, laser, and experimental weaponry. And as a baseline for these builds, they can operate and they're viable in those missions where you get super samples. Now, would I bring this into tier 10? I think there are better, more viable builds or loadouts for tier 10. I wouldn't count this among one of them, but technically, yeah, it could work in tier 10. I just wouldn't recommend it. And then, yeah, one last time, this is for a theme and it's for fun. And in my personal opinion, I find tier 7 and 8 actually to be the most enjoyable and balanced, where you can kind of bring whatever you want and still have a good time. But without further ado, let's get into the build. Let's get into the Iron Phantom. Or you could call it a cyborg too, because it's, half man, half machine. And real quick, before we get into the equipment, I almost forgot, this is going to be a jack of all trades build. So it's going to be able to kill everything. It's just a matter of how efficient it is questionable. But yeah, let's keep going. Real quick, let's blitz right into the equipment. For the primary slot, I've got two options for you, and I'll kind of explain why I juggled two of these, because I wanted to do the Las Sickle because it's a weapon that you can essentially have unlimited ammo with as long as you have a little bit of trigger discipline. And I feel like that really goes well with this theme. Unfortunately, I ran into back-to-back missions fighting the bugs where I had a bunch of Royal Guards and I had a bunch of Bile Spewers. And the Las Sickle versus armor, although yes, it can deal with it, it's just continuous waves of those type of enemies really makes using just the Las Sickle kind of a pain in the ass. So what I'm going to recommend is the Punisher Plasma Shotgun. This thing is a workhorse weapon. It slays out with chaff, it has good stagger, and it's an explosive weapon, so weak spots take even more damage. And for those enemies with armor, or medium armor I mean, like a Strider, like a Bile Spewer, this thing will put them down consistently. The ammo economy is not the greatest, but we're going to complement the Plasma Shotgun with our secondary, the Redeemer. The Redeemer is just an overall great secondary chaff clear. So you're going to want to swap between your primary and your secondary to handle those lower tier enemies one after the other. Now for the grenade slot, you could go with the stun grenade, but I would go with the impact grenade. Why I don't go with the stun grenade for this build is because you don't really need to lock down anything, and you'll see why once we get to the stratagem. So for the grenade, impact. Now the armor, the only armor you can go with is a servo assisted armor. This gives your limbs even more health, which is actually a huge benefit for surviving. This build in general is actually very tanky. The easiest way to get this armor is to go with the Steel Veterans War Bond, which is the first one that they released. This armor aesthetic is basically what inspired me to do a build like this. So you have this, soldier who has seen better days, but is still fighting for democracy. So he's got, metal limbs and prosthetics, but still a badass. Still a badass. And since Super Earth has pumped a lot of money into keeping this soldier alive, they give him all the latest and cutting edge toys to play with. So that's the equipment. Let's jump into the stratagems. Stratagems, going with the Quasar Cannon. This thing has seen better days, admittedly, but with a little patience, this thing still outputs a lot of damage. It does hit very hard and can one-shot things like gunships. Now for massive targets, or say something like a behemoth charger, it is going to struggle a little bit if you say miss a shot, or if you had to put one or more rounds into them. Keep that in mind. You could also take the laser cannon. I'm just not a fan of this weapon. I know some people rave about it. I just don't like the play style, and it overall kind of just feels bad to me. So I don't recommend that. I would rather take the Quasar Cannon. And so just with the kit that we've talked about so far, you know, you got your plasma shotgun, you're going to be taking out low tier chaff and those medium armors. You're going to be mixing in the Redeemer to help out with, say, like hunters or just troopers, something that's really easy to kill. And then you're going to pull out your Quasar Cannon for those heavy and massive targets. But remember, you're going to want to fire the Quasar Cannon and then start making some distance, because this thing does have a pretty lengthy cooldown. Would I love for it to see a buff? Yes. Will it though? Probably not. We don't know. With the way they're balancing the game right now, who knows? But moving on, we're going to our secondary stratagem now, and we're going to go with the Guard Rover. And yeah, the Guard Rover will just help keep chaff at bay. It does a really good job of that, has a really nice ammo economy. It's a pretty solid choice. And I think it works well as, like, you know, like an assisted gun on your shoulder or something like that. But we got a lot of energy, a lot of laser things going on right now. So let's keep that rolling into the third stratagem, which is the Orbital Laser. The Orbital Laser is a great stratagem. In fact, it's so great that they only limit it to 3 charges. Would I love to see some sort of like ship upgrade that boosts the amount of charges to 4? Yes. Would that happen? I don't know. But with 3, you do kind of feel it in those longer missions. So you have to be very careful about when you throw this thing down. This is probably one of your best ways to deal with massive enemies, but you only get 3 charges of it. So really, you just want to use this when your team's in like a real pickle. So Orbital Laser, very good. Just be careful how you use it. And so for this 4th slot, so we have you know, this mechanical soldier, half man, half machine. You know, they're in tune with the orbital command up there. They don't need to call it in. They can just, you know, they can do like a 01111 code and just beam it up and, you know, get their stratagems that way. So you could just put it in another orbital, something like a rail cannon, something that's just going to help you, you know, with those larger enemies. But I want to stay kind of in the energy area still. So I'm going with the Shield Generator Relay. Now, this thing is definitely more useful against the bots. I wouldn't bring it against the bugs. But for the bots, this thing has a relatively low cooldown and does create just like this, you know, force field that you can shoot out of and have free shots at all the bots around you. How long the shield stays up, kind of a problem. How many shots the shield can take, I think it could use a small bump. But there's no denying that it is effective at what it does, which is protect you in a bubble and lets you shoot out of it or throw stratagems out of it. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if eventually one day they buff this thing to be a little bit better. It does perform now, but there's definitely room for improvement with it. I think it's good enough to bring. And again, we're wheeling back to the bug side. I would go with a rail cannon, but honestly, this is kind of it's an anything slot at the moment, because I think one day we will get an exosuit that has some sort of energy or laser factor to it, and I would throw this in there. So we're going to keep this as a placeholder for it. But just know, I think it's going to come eventually. So we're really zipping along here, which, you know, I think I've been diddling around a little too much in these videos. So moving along to the strengths and the weaknesses of this build, and we're going to start off with the bug chart. Now for the bug chart, let's talk about the new kid on the block. Let's talk about the Impaler. And the best way to deal with the Impaler I found with this build is obviously an orbital laser will do it, but I don't think that's necessary. Either you keep it at a range with your Quasar Cannon, which this thing will punch and kill it eventually. It takes, what, 4 shots? Or if you want to get in close, and I would recommend getting in close with these things, because if you run, those tentacle claws will just beat the shit out of you. And God, they're fucking annoying. But get in close, cannon the back leg or the butt, and then switch to and then once the armor is broken off, switch to your plasma shotgun. And because it does explosive damage, it'll take this thing out really quick. So that's a viable way to take out the Impaler consistently. With something like the Bile Titan, you can use the Quasar Cannon to crack the armor, or again, you can just kind of wait for that cooldown and kill it that way. I just wouldn't. That would just kind of like take a while. That's the only thing really about this build, is it can kill everything. It's just that Quasar Cannon, that cooldown makes it kind of rough to just, you know, sit on that weapon and keep shooting with it. So the idea is, if you can crack a carapace with it and then switch to your plasma shotgun, that's the way to go. And then for the lower tier stuff, or like, you know, the little ones, yeah, you want to switch to your Redeemer when you can. And remember, the ammo economy for the plasma shotgun isn't the greatest. You'll go through a lot of ammo, surprisingly. You really want to save it for those medium armor and enemies that you want to kind of like keep at a distance and keep them staggered. But overall, pretty fun. Again, I'll probably say this a lot, but Quasar Cannon, switch to your shotgun, switch to your Redeemer, switch back to the Quasar Cannon, and that's kind of the loop you want to get into. And remember, you're going to have your Rover with you too to help out with the little ones. So you do eventually kind of get into a flow with this build. But I think it actually performs better against the bots. So let's pull up the bot chart. Now with the bots, obviously Troopers, not a big deal. Devastators, and then the Striders. You do have to pump a lot of plasma shots into them, but it keeps them stunned and they eventually do go down. So really there's no problem with them. Now with the new Strider, because it has more health, it does kind of like reach into that your ammo is going to hurt for it, and you really don't want to use your Quasar Cannon with it. You only want to use your plasma shotgun or grenades like to kill those fuckers. And things like a Hulk, you just kind of got to be careful. You got to make sure your Quasar Cannon shot hits, because if you miss, you got a little bit of a cooldown and those things charge you. Tanks on the other hand, it's really easy to get behind them. You just gotta kind of be aware that a tank is on the field and they're not that hard to deal with. But yeah, they all have those vents in the back, not very hard to deal with your weaponry. And then when it comes to gunships, like I said earlier, the Quasar Cannon does one-shot them. It's just when you get like a pack of gunships, you want it to stay around your squad, so hopefully they can help out with gunships too. But you'll be doing your part. And then the Factory Strider, this is probably what I'd save my orbital laser for, just because the Quasar Cannon, yeah, I can disable, the front guns and stuff. It's just, yeah, again, that cooldown, that's the real rub about this build. Anything that's heavily armored, you can, again, deal with, and it's just the Quasar Cannon and that cooldown makes it a little bit rough, because you can't just shoot one after the other. And also with the bots, let's not forget you have that shield generator relay. I would throw this down as often as possible. It has a short cooldown. It would actually surprise you how many times you can use this in a single map. So overall, this is a very solid build. I would not bring it into tier 10 because I don't think the Quasar Cannon is efficient enough to deal with, massive enemy after massive enemy and heavy to heavy. But below tier 10, I think this thing's a lot more fun to use, and it's going to be a good time because you'll be really good at clearing out chaff and being really tanky and kind of just in the thick of things. So yeah, that's the Iron Phantom. As you can see, a lot of energy weapons, a lot of lasers. Hey gang, future slightly tipsy nomad here. I'm aware that the dagger and the scythe both got secret buffs. That secret buff being that laser damage now catches things on fire much more quickly. That being said, I stand by everything I'm about to say about the two. I accidentally called the scythe the sickle. You'll see a little note saying I mean to call it the scythe, but just wanted to get that out of the way in case people are like, did you know it got a secret buff and these weapons are actually good now? Cheers. I know some of you are sitting there like, wait a second, we have a secondary laser gun. Why didn't you put that? That thing sucks ass. I am not gonna recommend that stupid laser las pistol thing. It's not good. I think I've made this point in another build video where if something is just dog shit, I'm not going to recommend it. I'm sure somebody will be like, oh, it's actually pretty good. It's not. And yet there's also that primary, las sickle. That thing's not very good. I don't like that one either. I know there's somebody in comment be like, well, actually, it's not that bad. No, it's pretty fucking bad. So I'm not going to recommend those two laser guns because they are bad at the moment. They need a buff. They need to be... Arrowhead needs to stop fucking around with all the good guns and start bringing up the bad ones because they are just notoriously not very viable. Let me know what you guys think about it. I love the whole cyborg aesthetic with this one, and thankfully we get some really cool armor sets. Not just one, I think we have 3 of them where you have the metal prosthetic limbs, and so it was just really easy to come together. But yeah, that's the build for the week. I might see you guys next week. I'll be out of town, but maybe I can squeeze one in, so we'll see. And until then, peace. Ah yes, and I almost forgot. Yes, she's there, she's sleeping, she's just doing what a puppy does. And I feel bad to have to pick her up and put her in some of these videos when it's like her nap time. Anywho, bye.